Drum roll, please. We are going to be doing my September reading wrap up. Yes, I know it is almost December, but I figured it's better late than never and get some recommendations. September was wonderful, actually. I read some really great books. The first book I read in September was a Frida McFadden book, and I was pleasantly surprised by this one. It was Ward D, and I rated it 4 stars. I did listen to this as an audiobook, and I liked it. This one gave me major creepy vibes for the majority of the book because of like the trapped aspect. Anything trapped is like terrifying to me. So that aspect made this book like I think more creepy. I didn't see the ending coming, especially the last twist. And I really enjoyed this one, and it will go in the top 5 of my most enjoyed Frida books, which I feel like is a lot coming from me because a lot of Frida books have been a miss for me. The last few I read were decent, and I did enjoy them, but I do feel like a lot of them have been a miss. So to say that Ward D is in my top 5 Frida books, pretty good. Next book, which whoa took me for a ride, was The Push by Ashley Adrain. I rated this 5 stars. But let me tell you, nobody, which maybe you did and I didn't listen, but nobody told me about the trigger warnings on this book. So please read the trigger warnings. I feel like especially if you are a new mom, pregnant, honestly just a mom in general, this book was hard for me to read, and there were times I actually had to just stop reading altogether and come back because I was physically ill. So I would like to tell you to please read the trigger warnings. This is a very dark book. The first words on my review for this are holy shit. Like, yeah. I needed to add that to my review for emphasis because, man, this review needs it. This author's writing is rough, and I feel like that is the best word to describe it. It is rough, raw, and a little edgy. It's also very dark. That is, yeah, it's hard, but it's still great writing. It's a great story. It's just a little hard to read sometimes. This book had a lot of hard subject matter to read, but it was a good read, and it all came together at the end. And the last sentence on the last page had me gasping, even though I wasn't shocked or surprised. It just was like, like it kind of reaffirmed things that I was already thinking, but loved it. And I honestly, previously to reading this, I've heard so many people talk about this book. I've seen it everywhere. People love it for good reason. It is a dark, tense book that was thrilling, but again, check the trigger warnings. This next book was Horror Movie by Paul Tremblay. I listened to the audiobook version. I rated this 2 stars, honestly, and now that I look back on it, I should have just rated it 1. I really did not enjoy this book, and it's funny because one of my bookish friends, we both were reading it at the same time, and she enjoyed this book. I very much did not. This book was plain weird. The only reason it got 2.5 instead of 2, I guess I rated it 2.5, my bad, is because of the last 20 minutes. That threw me for a dang loop and made the book a little better. So I actually I never remember books like the minute I finish reading them. And I read this at the beginning of September, and I still remember what the heck I'm talking about here. It was weird. Freaking weird. The audiobook was kind of cool because it incorporated like movie production scenes, but it also was really hard to follow. I constantly was texting my bookish friend, like, do I have this right? Is this what happened? I'm confused. I wasn't 100% sure. And I think if I hadn't gotten so confused on some of the parts, I may have enjoyed this book a little bit more. I'm not going to say a lot, just a little bit. Anyway, overall, I think reading this book was, I can't believe I wrote this, but it's still genuinely how I feel. Reading is subjective, but I just feel like reading this book was a waste of my time, and I could have went my whole life without reading it. Then we read No Exit by Taylor Adams, which I loved this book. Gave it 5 stars. Loved this book. Masterpiece, genius, truly. Loved it. As an avid thriller reader, it takes a lot to surprise me and keep my heart pounding throughout a majority of the book, and this one totally did it. Was amazing. And how he like kept clicking things into place it was amazing how seamlessly everything was like coming together. This book is based in a rest area, and a rest area is one of my biggest fears. That also helped make this book so creepy for me. Next was Sea of Whispers by Melanie Murphy, and I was actually sent this book by the author, and I really loved it. I easily could have devoured it in one sitting, but my job, my son took time away from that. But I easily could have read this so quickly. It was very good. And if you believe and appreciate things like fate, divine intervention, this book is 100% for you. Not only that, it was a suspenseful mystery that kept me guessing and feverishly flipping through the pages. I became very invested in a few of the characters in this book, and I found myself angry, sad, happy, scared, and all the things for them. I honestly can't believe this is actually one of Melanie's first books, and the writing was so engaging and entertaining with magic that was just like felt through the pages that I couldn't believe this was one of her first books. Definitely check her out. She is, like I said, a newer author, so definitely check this book out if you are a thriller reader. Next was The New Couple in 5B by Lisa Unger. And I gave this 4 stars. This was an audiobook. I really enjoyed this book. I went back and forth many times about who the villain was, and I was surprised many times by the unveiled secrets. This book could have been faster paced to keep me on my toes more, but overall it was a good read. I will say the first few hours were on the faster side, and it had me like really excited to keep listening. I feel like towards the middle it slowed its pace a little bit. The book did have some nods to Paranormal Activity and like woo-woo things. If you don't love those things, just for fair warning. Next, I read Dear Wife by Kimberly Bell, and I listened to this as an audiobook, gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. I had inklings about what was really going on and who the bad guy was early on, but I wasn't for sure, and I was very intrigued this whole book. It was a great read. Next was The Stillwater Girls by Minka Kent. And this has been on my TBR for years. Like, I think I added this to my TBR in 2020. It was every bit as good as people told me it was. I was unsure in the beginning how the 2 point of views were connected, but then it all connected and made sense. This book threw me for a freaking loop. I did not expect what happened towards the end at all. I also felt like it was pretty fast-paced, which I really appreciate in a thriller. The last book of September was The Doll's House by Lisa Unger. This is a short story, by the way. I rated it 4 stars. And I randomly stumbled upon this book, and it was very interesting. It was very fast-paced, almost too fast-paced, actually, in my opinion, which I normally like, but some of this felt too fast, like no build-up, out of nowhere. So that kind of like was a letdown for me. But one thing is, part of this book gave me nostalgia for the movie Smart House, if you remember that. So kind of creepy vibes in that sense. But overall, September was a great reading month for me. Audiobooks have really helped me up my reading, and also having Kindle Unlimited. Cheers to reading and a good reading month.